Welcome to the show, Elizabeth. Well, back to the show, I should say. Back to the show for your second appearance. You were on season 4 early on, and now you're back for season 5.
Woohoo!
Now, just to refresh people's memory, you have a clean date, but then you have a new date for marijuana. Is that right?
Yep.
So, what is your overall? You've been clean from. Well, let's remind people your drugs of choice were.
Anything I could get my hands on. But meth is what got me in trouble. And I have been clean from meth and alcohol since April 7th of 2022. And then I had a little lapse on the marijuana and been clean from that since May 30th of 23.
So you're coming up on 2 years and 1 year.
Yep.
Because I consider them different. You know what I mean? Like people in the rooms won't consider that different. You know what I mean? Because since we've talked, I had a small relapse with my Ativan.
Oh.
I used my Ativan one night, and now so I reset the clock for clean time, which is November 16th. I have 3 dates that I count in recovery right now. I have my recovery date, which is April 25th, 2018. That's when I was introduced to recovery. I learned about recovery. I went to the rooms. I learned about the different fellowships and all that shit. And then, so that's my recovery date. Then I have a sober date, which is 2/29 of 2020. So I'm coming up on 4 years on being sober from alcohol.
Gotcha.
And now I have my new clean date, which is November 16th. So
yeah.
15th. So every day counts.
Yeah, good for you.
So
That's
I
awesome.
understand having the different dates in your head because you may not get a chip for everything. You know what I mean? But to me, it streamlines my recovery with different things and different. I can think about my recovery easier. I'm like, oh, where was I at when I was doing this? And I'm like, all right, where in my recovery was I at the time?
Yeah. I think it also helps me realize that like I didn't lose any of that clean time, but I gained some learning experience from that relapse and like learned like I'm able to compare now like in this year of being clean again from marijuana like where I was at compared to 2 years ago when I was, just starting my recovery.
Now, where do you see the difference with cutting out marijuana?
I had to cut out the marijuana because I have like, and I learned the hard way, kind of like the true addict personality. I wish that I could use it still, but it wouldn't have been too long before I would have started drinking again. And then once I start drinking, I end up at the dealer's house, and that's just not a good place for me to go. So I wish that I could use it, recreationally or just every once in a while or whatever, but I realized very quickly that it escalates pretty fast. So
yeah, it's definitely teetering. You know what I mean? It's definitely, that's why I think I keep the different dates in my head. Because I can kind of rely on the dates as a way to like not want to mess up my recovery. Like I still haven't touched my oxycodone, my original addiction that I was addicted to was those pills. And I still haven't had one since April 24th of 2018. So to me, that's not a recovery date. That's like I'm free date. You know what I mean? Like when I relapsed with drinking, it was for like 9 months I drank. And I thought I was doing it right. You know what I mean? Like I would drink here and there. I would drink if I went to like a comedy show. You know what I mean? Like that, and that's what I would drink. And then all of a sudden I found myself drinking an entire bottle of Jack Daniels and waking up hungover. And that became a problem. And I said to my wife, listen, like we either need to quit drinking or I got to go make a drink right now. And, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Those are the 2 avenues that we can take. And we took the road more traveled than the road less traveled and decided to get sober. So, and I said to her, leap day, that's our sober date. That's a perfect sober date because we only can celebrate it once every 4 years.
Right.
So that's why this leap is a leap day this year. So, and the reason that's important is because it's our first time we can actually celebrate our anniversary on our anniversary.
That's
Before
awesome.
February 28th or March 1st, and it goes back and forth. Um, but yeah, it's strange coming up on that long without a drink. Like I drank when I was 11 years old,
Yeah.
and I'm in my 30s now, and so I drank for a solid 20 years before I decided to stop. And that's where you were a late bloomer, weren't you? You
I
started,
was.
you started in college, right?
Yeah, basically.
Now, are you consider yourself an alcoholic, like how you drank?
Yeah, so I've been going to a lot more AA meetings lately, and I was just explaining this in one of the meetings that I was in the other night that I know I'm an alcoholic because that was the means to the end. Like, if I couldn't find what I wanted drug wise, I always knew I could go to the store and get a bottle or get a few shooters or whatever. And there was not, like, I can think of a good handful or more of times that I just had booze in my purse or in my bag that I was carrying just in case, because I just had to have something to like not feel the way that I was feeling.
Now, what kind of feelings were you feeling to where you feel like you needed shooters in your purse?
Um, I I would say
Was it
just the basic excuses like that everybody uses when they're in the heat of their addiction. You know, I had anxiety problems. I was, you know, any emotion that I had, I wanted to numb. Good emotions, bad emotions. Like I felt like I could handle myself better when I was inebriated than I could when I was sober.
that makes total sense. I mean, one of the main things I think that keep us in addiction is that all of our problems, most of them were caused by us.
Yeah,
Most of the things you were you're stressed about because you're on drugs, and
right.
you need to figure out when you're going to get your fix, how you're going to get your fix, how you can afford to get your fix. And all three of those anxieties, they make it so that we can't do anything. And all that we can think to do is to drink or get high over.
Yep.
Because drinking was my means to an end also. Like I how do I put this? I drank when I was around other people that didn't know that I was getting high. Like there was people that I hung
Yep.
out with and got high with. They knew I was getting high. But say I was with like my parents or like my family where I had to stay high still, but I would drink in front of everybody so that if I was looking high, it would present as drunk.
Yep. I did the same thing. Or I thought that like I had this magic potion figured out, that like, you know, if I cuz I didn't like being drunk, but I liked being buzzed. So I would have to figure out just the right amount of
That cocktail.
drinking till this point. Yep, that perfect little cocktail. And I always knew that if I like got too high, I could go take a couple shots of Jack, which was my liquor of choice. Yeah, high five, buddy. um, yeah, we that's just how I did it, you know? If I got too high, I'd start drinking. If I got too drunk, I'd get high.
You know,
And I
Jack,
always had to make sure that I got the weed in there somewhere too. And that was another thing that kind of should have given away that I had a problem
problem.
with it all.
So I've thought about giving up weed too, and I can still afford it. My life's not unmanageable because of it. If
Right.
if I run out, I can go without it. Like it's no big deal. I'm not like, when did you have a regular bank account when you were in addiction?
No.
Did you go through multiple banks because you were screwing them over?
Not quite to that point. I just like I never was able to hold a job long enough to need a bank account. Like any money that I ever had, I was comfortable just carrying in my purse because it was never very much. I used like PayPal and stuff for a while when I did start getting like money, or like that's how I would get money from my mom, and she still, if I need help, she'll send me money through PayPal. That's kind of how we do it. But I did, the only like bank thing or like money type stuff that I ever really like screwed over, or like I have bad, like, I don't know what you would call it, I have bad repercussions from it, was Facebook Pay. I am blocked from, because I use that far too much in my addiction for things I shouldn't have, and my account has been blocked from Facebook Pay for I don't know how long.
I'm blocked from PayPal. I have to. My
Yeah.
mom will Venmo me. I have the same thing with my mom. If I need a little help, my mom will Venmo me, and I have the
Yep.
Venmo. I have the Venmo card, so I don't have to like transfer it to my bank or do any of that silly stuff. I have it right away.
Yep.
And my wife and I use Cash App, and I get my direct deposits on Cash App.
Yep.
So I get paid 2 days early because I use Cash App. And I can't get a regular bank account because I'm on a list. I screwed I screwed over so many banks by going into the negative that no one will give me a bank account anymore.
Oh my God.
Like, I'm on a list of just like a nationwide list of don't give this guy a bank account because he will go in the negative and he will never pay you back.
That's
Like,
terrible.
I was doing a you know what a payday loan is?
Yeah.
So I always held a job when I was in addiction. Like, that's how I funded, because my addiction was $200-300 a day. It was an
Yeah.
expensive addiction. So I had to keep a job the entire time. So this one job, I got drug tested randomly because I was high at work on a Monday, and then I got suspended until they waited for the results. And I knew the results were going to come back on Friday. So on that Wednesday, I did a payday loan, knowing that I wasn't going to get any more paychecks.
Oh.
And so I filled out the questionnaire online, and I got a phone call within 10 minutes, and they offered me $300. And I said, okay, cool. And you got to pay them back next week. That's the whole thing. So
Right.
they sent me $300 and we hung up. And then all of a sudden, I got like 5, 6, 7, 8 more phone calls, like back to back to back. And they all approved me. And I ended up getting
Oh
3 grand.
no.
I ended up getting 3 grand deposited in my account in one day. And then I went to the bank and I shut down my account. So when they went to go take money out, there was no bank account linked to it anymore.
Oh my
And
goodness.
I did that like 4 different times, like for 4 different jobs. Like, if I knew I was going to lose my job that week, I did a payday loan. It happened at a bank. It happened all over. I can't even. I was bad news. Like, I was
It sounds like it.
bank accounts, payday loans. Like, I'm blocked from so many things right now. It's ridiculous.
Yeah. I mean, that's what it does to you though. Like, you'll get it no matter how you got to get it. That's just how the addiction works.
I did everything and anything to get those
Yep.
pills, those little blue pills, every day. And you know what? I probably could go without weed, and because if I can go through without those pills, I can really go through anything. I mean, those those pills, man. I can't even describe. Like, I had to write a breakup letter. And did you ever go to rehab?
Yeah.
How many rehabs did you go to?
One.
When did you go to that rehab?
I went, so my clean date from meth and alcohol is the first day that I went into rehab. So April 7th until like May 7th or 8th, I think. I got out right after my mom's birthday, which is May 5th. So 2 years ago, I went to Sioux City, which is a couple hours from where I live. I went to a Rosecrans Jackson inpatient recovery.
Is that how you got introduced to like AA?
Yeah. Yeah.
They
And I've
took.
really focused more on NA. Like the AA part of it has really been kind of a new thing within the past couple of months with me.
Yeah, I was more AA. I went to, when I first found recovery, I went to like 2 meetings a week in NA, and then I went to AA like twice a day. So I was definitely more AA than NA, and then I moved. I went to LA for rehab, and NA was huge out there. Their main head, AA's main headquarters, New York City. LA is NA's headquarters. So NA is huge around there. So I went to like 2-3 meetings a week to NA, but like I felt more comfortable in AA. There was more people like me in AA than NA because like I think I just didn't fit in as much in NA. And AA, I saw myself in so many people. I'm like, okay, well, they're talking about pills. I can talk about pills in AA, but there's a lot of places you can't talk about pills. You know what I mean? There's a lot of groups that you have to say alcohol instead of pills. I'm like that, but that's ridiculous. Like, I wasn't driving 2 hours to buy alcohol. I was driving 2 hours.
Right.
Like I could have went around a corner and got some alcohol. I could have went to the bar. There's plenty of places I could get some alcohol, but if I wanted pills, I had to drive 2 hours.
Yeah.
And I would do that trip 3-4 times a week. The things we did. Did you have a car in addiction?
So kind of for part of it. I would have a car for a while and then it would get either impounded or taken away somehow, or I don't think I ever wrecked any of them, but like I had a license the whole time, which is what really got me into trouble. But I didn't really like have my own vehicle for very long ever in addiction. So
yeah, I had one repoed.
Yeah.
And then I had another. I got into 2 fender benders in one drive.
Oh my God.
I was on so many Xanax, and
that'll do it.
I had a 45-minute ride home. Like my drive time was 45 minutes. And on the same road, because it was a straight shot of a 15-minute or 45-minute ride, it was the same road for like 40 minutes. And I got into 2 wrecks on the same damn road.
Oh my goodness.
Like, did all my information swapping with my insurance in the first one, and then did all that. We didn't have to call the police because it wasn't that crazy. There was no damage on his car. There was more damage on mine.
Yeah.
So I have damage on my car and still driving home. It was a 4-car pileup. Like I was I was third in line.
Oh my God.
Yeah. And I still don't know if it was my fault. I'm sure it was.
This podcast is also sponsored by BetterHelp. If you are looking for therapy and not able to get something right away locally, you can do that with them. Within 48 hours, you can find a therapist to get on telehealth with you. I mean, I haven't heard anything but great things from people that have already done it, that watch my show or listen to my show. If you're looking to get 10% off your first month, you can go to betterhelp.com/MJsPNPMCA. That is betterhelp.com/MJsPNPMCA.
I vaguely remember it, so it's tough to say if it was my fault or not. You know what we didn't talk about last time is your last 5 years in addiction. And so 2017?
Yep.
What was going on for you in 2017?
Let's see. Let me think here. I'm pretty sure that was when I was starting to get into the abusive relationships that I was in there for a while. I was pretty deep.
Were you using while you were in like the abusive relationships?
Yeah, the using is what the using is what led to the relationships. I was just finishing my step 4 last night, and was kind of thinking and writing about that stuff. Like, it really all stemmed back to the fact that I knew that I could get what I needed from each of those individuals. I had 2 really bad abusive relationships that were basically like one right after the other. But I was kind of reflecting last night about how, like, I realize now that, like, I was probably just as abusive to the first one, just not in the same ways. I was very, like, mentally and emotionally abusive because I was, like, so gone on drugs. It was just a long strung out, like, situationship basically, and I didn't really admit that it was a relationship until it was over. So, but yeah, I was pretty heavy into using during that time.
Was it more physically or mentally from him?
It was, I remember the physical abuse more so, but I think that it was probably mentally as well, emotionally, just because of, the mood swings that came from doing the drugs. And like, the first relationship that was pretty abusive was when I really learned about, like, the capabilities of technology if one has the knowledge of it. He was able to, like, get into my phone without me knowing, get into my accounts, like, online and stuff. He had cameras, like, everywhere all the time. Yeah, so it was like
all the time? Was he dealing?
Yeah.
And paranoid because he's using meth.
Yep. Using meth, using coke, using weed, drinking. Like, he did a little bit of all of it. But he was one of the heavier dealers that I ever knew in my life.
Is he still out there?
Nope, he's in federal prison right now.
Good.
Yeah.
And that was for dealing?
Yeah, it was for a whole mess of things.
Can I guess that he had guns because he was that paranoid with that many cameras? He would have to be carrying a gun too.
Yep, and that was part of what got him locked up this time. Was there was a gun found in his car that had the serial number scratched off of it. So.
Yep, I called that one.
Yep, you did. One for JD.
So it's really hard to leave those abusive relationships where they feel like almost you're their property.
Yes.
How do you walk away from that but still stay in your addiction?
Well, it was just kind of a let's see, the first one I just kind of got away because I, stayed away from the right places. I did struggle for a little bit with, like, being in the wrong place at the wrong time. There was one instance that I remember quite vividly, where I had been at this house hanging out, like smoking a joint with somebody or something in, like, the garage area of the house. And my ex had shown up there to sell some drugs to the people who lived in the house that were inside. And so to get inside the house, you had to walk through the garage. And neither of us were expecting to see the other one there. But because of his temper, I don't know if he was high or whatever, like, when he would snap, he would snap. And he came in the garage and saw me sitting there smoking a joint with somebody and just freaked out and pulled his gun out, pistol whips me, knocks me to the ground. I, like, get myself to come to, and he's got the gun held to this guy that I'm smoking with's head. And I'm like, what do I do now? This is after a whole nother incident where he, like, ran somebody over basically and, like, broke their leg because it was, like, a few nights prior, and he had thought that the girl that was with the guy he hit was me, but it wasn't. Like, dude was definitely too far gone. So just all the things like that are what I think of when I like reminisce, I guess you could call it, on the abuse of the relationship.
I call it looking back.
Yeah. Yeah.
So you get out of that relationship and you basically, your next relationship, you're also being abused.
Yeah. So it kind of, right. It happened to be the guy who got ran over that I ended up being in this relationship with after the first one. But there was a little bit of time in there where, I was running around with, basically every Tom, Dick, and Harry that wanted me to go hang out with them or run around or whatever you want to call it. I was just kind of living the free single life, and thought that I had everything under control and was doing okay. And the second relationship that I was in that was fairly abusive, was kind of I ended up there and then didn't get out type of thing. This guy was.
I want to rewind real quick because you said something interesting. This guy got ran over by your ex.
Yes.
And the reason he got run over was because your ex thought you guys were together.
Yes.
Did you know this gentleman that got ran over by a car?
Yes.
And then did you bond over that?
I mean, I wouldn't say we bonded over it, but I definitely felt bad because, if it wasn't for the fact that my first ex was looking for me and thought that the female that was with this second ex or whatever at that moment was me, then he maybe wouldn't have gotten run over. I don't know. It was all a very drama, stressful, drug-filled situation.
How long in between him getting run over and you guys hooking up? What was that time frame? Can you remember of how long it was?
So he was kind of like I used hanging out with that second guy as like a weekend getaway for a long time, because he lived in a town where nobody else lived. It wasn't too far from Carroll where I was hanging out at and where I live now. And so I had been kind of hooking up with him on and off, every couple of months. I'd be like, hey, what are you doing? Or he'd be like, hey, what are you doing? And we'd just hide out at his house, chill, do whatever, just be by ourselves. But I would say that we started dating, or the situation between me and that second guy got to the point where I was his property in his mind, or we were in a relationship, however you wanted to label it. Probably a couple years.
Oh, okay, because this is a 5-year span, so it took you a couple years before you. And did he show any signs of aggression when you guys were having the weekend getaways and shit?
Not towards me, no. In fact, he seemed to be the biggest loving, caring teddy bear type. He would bring me to go to his mom's house. He would bring me to go see his sister. I, got to know his nieces and nephews. It was pretty normal from what I could tell. And then as time progressed, I kind of started picking up on some things that didn't really make sense, or he would leave me there for longer than a person should leave a guest in their house just alone with no, he didn't have any internet in that house at the time. There was no running water there. He didn't have a whole lot of food. It was just a very uncomfortable space to be left in for that long of a time.
Because he was using too.
Yep.
So since you're in this area that you don't know so well, is he the one that's providing and getting the meth because he has connections locally, or are you bringing that with you when you go to travel?
I guess it kind of depended. When we started, when the relationship started, he was very much the provider of it to me. But every once in a great while, I would have a little bit of my own that I would bring with on the weekends. But I wasn't really ever the person to like have the drugs. I just had the things you needed to do the drugs. So
now how long did that last?
On and off, that lasted 2.5 years.
Did you guys break up when you went to rehab?
So we broke up a little bit before I went to rehab. And it was very much a controlling, like, run around, try to get away from him, but like I was in that space where like I didn't want to commit to going to live where I did end up going to live, which was with my grandpa in my hometown of Manning, like 20 miles away from Carroll. And so I was like kind of doing that couch surfing, like just going wherever I felt I could stay away from him type of thing. Because what it broke down to after however many years, 2.5 or whatever, of us doing this back and forth and, you know, me not being safe with him and all this other stuff. There, at the point in time when I decided to leave, he had bought a Grand Prix and put it in my name. And when I had found out that he was, like, I had suspected a few times that he'd been cheating on me, but I never had any proof. Well, this time I had very much proof that he had been running around with some other girl behind my back, lying to me about it, whatever. So it was during one of those extended times where he wasn't home. I loaded everything of mine that I could fit into that Grand Prix, took my dog, and left. And it wasn't long before he ended up tracking me down because he found where the car was at and he destroyed it. And then continued to kind of follow me, and then finally just sort of gave up. And he actually ended up passing away. I am under the impression that he was murdered not long after that. So that's kind of a plot twist for everything as well.
That's wild. The two people that abused you, it's almost like karma.
Right.
And I hate to say that about somebody passed away. But at the same time, he was a piece of shit to you. Like,
right.
You know what I mean?
Right.
You get your comeuppance when you're a bad person. It doesn't end with the picket fence and the house.
Right.
So what made you take that final? Because like I'm a one rehab person too. I've only been to rehab once. What made you be like, okay, time for rehab?
My probation officer.
So we
said,
skipped over something. How are you on probation now?
We skipped over something. You're right. So during one of the times that second abusive relationship and I were broke up, I got into some legal trouble, and I was driving a friend's vehicle, and they had what the state of Iowa considers a decent amount of drugs on them. And he took it out of his pocket and he stuck it between the passenger's door and the seat, because that's the seat he was sitting in since I was driving his car. And because I was the driver of the vehicle, I got charged with those drugs. So I ended up pleading down and getting, only getting charged with like failure to affix drug tax stamp or whatever, but it was still like a felony or whatever. And so I was on probation for that for roughly 2 years until I got the fines paid off for it. So that was like, I got put on probation when I was still with that second guy. And that was like the one thing that he did do right, was he made sure that I made those appointments. I never missed a PO appointment. Was I still getting high? Yep. Was I telling my PO about the situation that I was in and like kind of asking for help without straight up asking for help? Yep. And so then once I had gotten out of that second guy's house, I had moved out and I was a little bit more stable, like mentally, and I was still failing the UAs. PO said, okay, I've waited long enough. It was probably almost a year that he like put up with those failed UAs and like me making excuses and all that other stuff. And then he said, all right, this is it, jail or treatment. We're figuring it out, and you're going to one of the two. And I was like, okay, well, I guess I'll go to treatment because I can't stand jail. So I went and did a drug eval at the local, like, new opportunities or whatever, and they found me a bed within 3 days. I had to leave, so it was very short notice, but it was worth it.
Yeah. Now, it was short notice for me too, where like I decided to go to rehab on April 20th or April 21st rather, and I was in a bed by the 25th.
Yep.
Which isn't bad because I had to travel 6 hours by plane to get to my bed. And that was rough going through. I had to, so the last time I used, I was at an airport hotel with my mom. She didn't, that sounded weird. She didn't get high with me.
I get what you're saying.
What happened was my mom gave me a ride to the airport, stayed with me one night, and then dropped me off on the plane because she wanted to make sure I got on the plane. And so I had my guy, because like where I'm from is like 15 minutes from the Philly airport. So I hooked up my guy. I gave him gas money and toll money and asked him to come to the hotel and bring me my pills. So he did, and I did half of them that night right away because I was in pain. And then I did the other half at like 5 in the morning before I got on that flight. And I had a layover in Chicago, so I had to like get my belongings and like have a straight mind to get to the right place at the right time. And then I started withdrawing midair, like flying from Chicago to LA. And I feel like 2-3 hours into that flight, I started having stomach pains from the withdrawals. But once I landed in LA, and I was a day and a half from Jersey by car, I didn't withdraw that bad. Like I thought it was going to be way worse than it was, and which is usually a bad thing because then it tells some addicts that they can just do this again, and they're gonna feel better. But for some reason, I think it was the distance where like I knew that I couldn't even if I wanted to. And I'm already in this new situation, so you might as well make the best of it. You know, I'm in a city where I know nobody. So let's be a new person now and learn who you are. And it was like I wanted to be there. I wanted to do that. It wasn't I didn't need to be there. I wanted to be there. And I think that's why it works so well. Why do you think it works so well for you too?
I think that was a big part of it for me. A new place where I didn't know people, and I knew that I was like far enough away from home that I couldn't just like walk out, which was per my PO's like stipulations. He said that if I decided to go to treatment, that I was not allowed to go to Manning, which is one of the highest rated rehab centers in our state, and that just so happens to be my hometown. And I had asked him, you know, like, why can't I just go there? Like they're a super well rated place. And he's like, because you're too close to home and you could just literally walk out the door if you wanted to. I was like, okay, I don't think I'll want to, but fair. Well, I'm glad that he realized that and sent me somewhere where I couldn't just do that, because those first 3 days like were absolute hell.
Were you in psychosis?
I mean, yeah, you could probably call it that. I was pretty much crying for 3 days straight. My conscious mind was telling me it was because I didn't have my dog, because she is my emotional support animal. And that was like one of my big things about going into treatment was I wanted to be able to bring her with me. She's certified. I don't see the problem, yada, yada. Like, but looking back now, it was just another part of it that, and I'm like nervously petting her as I'm saying this, like, because I do love this dog and she's everything to me. But looking back now, it really made it just made me stronger, and it made me learn that I can get through things that I don't want to get through. And I definitely probably would have walked out if I wasn't 200 miles away from home.
We both have that love for our dogs before rehab. I have my mom has the dog now because she has a backyard that's fenced in, and she has another dog the same age as her. So my mom has the dog now, but she was my dog for the first 2 years that we had her. And I always drove because, like I said, I had an hour and a half drive each way. So I was in the car for 2 to 3 hours every time I went to get pills. And I would bring my dog with me because I was suicidal. And I always knew I'm not going to hurt myself with the dog in the car.
Yep.
Because I always had this thing like, if I'm going to commit suicide, I'm going to like drive into a tree. This way, it looks like a car accident, and my family doesn't think that I ended my life. And once I had that mindset, or once I had that thought of what I would do, and I had the plan, the next thing after you plan it is the action. So I started bringing my dog with me, knowing that I'm not going to want to hurt her. I want to hurt me, but I don't want to hurt her. So
right.
She's a great traveler now. Like, she can go in a car and just chill out because she went all those rides. Like 2 years she was taking drives with me.
Yep.
But I never wanted to hurt myself when I had her in the car. So it's crazy what dogs can do for like your mental health. And
So Savage is the same way. She's 7 now. 6, 7, something like that. I actually got her from that first abusive relationship boyfriend because I was so love bombed at the beginning of that relationship, and then being in his house by myself all day, like hours away from where I'm used to being. I started getting baby fever, and I'm like, that'll help. Like, let's have a baby. And I was like, wait. Let's not do that. How about I get a dog? And he was like, absolutely, I'll get you a dog. So I got her, and then throughout the entire relationship with him and all my other relationships, like, this dog was right here with me the whole time. She has been through probably just as much, if not more bullshit than I have, like, through my addiction. I mean, we were both homeless. Like, she ate before I did most times. Like, we did a lot of walking those first few years.
Yeah, I always made sure she was fed before me too. That was the one thing I always made sure, was that I could afford her food and make sure that she was taken care of. So we both have that going. Well, let me see her. What kind of dog is it?
Gabby! She's part pit and part something else. I don't really know what she is. I want to get a test done for her. Get up here, baby. JD wants to see you. Come here. Look at you.
Oh my God. Oh, yeah. Look. Hey girl.
Yeah, her name's Savage.
That's awesome. But
yeah, she's the doll.
Well, I'm glad that you came back on and told some more stories. Now we have your complete story. So if you missed her first episode and you can't find it, just message me on one of my social medias, and I'll hook you up with her first episode too if you didn't see that or hear that, whether you're listening or watching. I have like a lazy eye thing going today. I wake up. I
have it every day, so you're fine.
I wake up sometimes with this eye shut, like, completely, and
oh no,
it takes me like 2 hours to like get it open again so I can work. So I just looked at myself in the camera for the first time, like, oh man, I'm all droopy. But thank you again for being so open and, telling more of your story. There's a lot of people that will relate to this part of your story, especially the abusive relationships, which we didn't go into last time. And I'm glad we did, because I hear a lot of the same things that I've heard before from other women about their abusive relationships. So I know it's a relatable story, and you're not alone in that. So
yeah.
You again for being so open about that, because I know it's not easy to revisit to revisit those memories. I know it's not easy. So thank you again. I appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks. I appreciate being on.
All right, we'll talk soon.
Sounds good.
All right, bye.
Bye.